What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sunday Sports Club Podcast with Allison and Kuch, a podcast all about sports told by a woman, and that woman is me. Hi, guys. I'm Allison Kuch, and your host of Sunday Sports Club Podcast. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Kayce Smith from Barstool. She is the lead host of Barstool College Football show with Dave Portnoy, Dan Katz, and Brandon Walker. She's also the lead host of Pro Football Show, which featured Deion Sanders for the first 3 years. She is also the co-host of Barstool's college football podcast, Unnecessary Roughness, which is also the only podcast in the network that has a male and female lead. She does all of this while being a new mom as well, so I can relate to her on that level. So some things you can plan to hear in today's episode is, one, we're going to talk about mom stuff and becoming a parent because it's wild. I literally feel like becoming a mom is a sport in and of itself. We're also going to be talking about what it's like being a woman working at Barstool. If you guys didn't know what Barstool is, you're going to learn today about what it is and what the working environment is for not only for a woman, but also for a mom. We're going to get into talking all about the nitty gritty of football and some things she might have opinions on. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Miss Peaches. So I hope you guys are excited for this interview. Let's get right into it. First and foremost, I feel like from mom to mom, how are you? Like mentally, physically, how are you doing? We're about to enter football season, so I'm sure you're super busy.
I am, but first of all, thank you for asking that because as you know, when you sit down with men, they don't care about that. I mean, they might care, but they don't think to ask you first.
I feel like the first question is like, are they walking?
Yes. What are they saying? Have they picked up a ball yet? What do they do?
Right.
I know. And
what sport do you think they're going to play?
Exactly, which we can get into because having an 18-month-old son, like that's a full conversation now.
Yeah.
But I'm doing all right. I will say, like I hit a point around probably 15 or 16 months where I thought, I feel like myself a little bit again. Mm-hmm. And I know that that's scary to think that it took over a year.
It's like terrifying. I'm only 8 months. I'm like, okay, so another 8 months. Okay, got it.
But then now a lot of those like early moments feel like a fever dream to me. I'm like, I made it through that. This is going to be a piece of cake. Now he is crawling on top of things now. Like he's full blown running, walking. I found him on top of the kitchen table the other day, which is a very high. And I was like, so maybe I'm not well. Maybe I am unwell, but like I have to watch these things. But no, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
8 months. 8 months is still in the weeds.
Yeah, I feel like I am starting to get, like the hang of things where I'm feeling a little bit more confident as a mom. But then I also still have days where I'm like, wait, what? I think I actually read it on your blog that you were like, how do you're just able to bring home a baby?
They don't do anything but just send you out the door. Like, how in the world?
They didn't even check my car seat. I was on YouTube.
I mean, we had like the Duna because we're in New York City, and when we got to the car that was taking us to where we were staying, I was like, one's here to help.
I did not even think of like, did you have a base?
No,
you just strap it in.
No, because the Duna is like made for that, right? No free ads. We love the Duna. We got out there and like, luckily my dad was with us because both of us are like, we live in the city, we don't know. And my dad was like, oh, you guys don't know, I can help you with this. What would we do if grandpa wasn't here?
Yeah, absolutely, which it takes a village, let me tell you that. Okay, so there are a lot of listeners that are new to football, new to sports, trying to get into it. So I want this podcast to be for like everybody. So give everyone a quick little just like recap on who you are, how you know anything about football, what you do.
So mentioning my dad, like I always say this, that if it wasn't for my dad, I don't know how much that I would truly love football the way that I did growing up. So I grew up in Dallas, Texas, or the Dallas area. If my dad's listening, it's Arlington. He gets very offended. But people that are listening, it's the Dallas area.
I say Detroit and I'm like, I'm not from Detroit. Yeah. I'm from the suburbs.
But people that don't know the area are like, oh, okay, I get it. My dad's like, can you please say Arlington? The Cowboys Stadium is there. People know where it is. I'm like, okay,
you know what's crazy? Yeah, that's the only reason I know what Arlington is.
The only reason.
Your dad's going to hear that and be like, see, I told you.
See, he gets mad when people on TV say it. Like, Dad, okay, I'm from Arlington, Texas, but we are a huge college football family. So my dad went to Texas A&M. So, I mean, I was wearing maroon and white as soon as I could. And he basically was just hoping it's just my sister and I. So she's 3 years younger than me, didn't have any boys. And he was like, God, I hope one of them loves sports. And I just fell in love with college football. Like that was my thing. And growing up, it was like, well, I know I can't play. Right. And so I was just held
Not yet.
Not yet. At the time, in the early 90s, it was like, no. But I looked at it and I thought, how can I make this a career?
Right.
And then as I got older, I was like, maybe I should learn something else. Like, no, I really love football. And so I went to Texas A&M, obviously. worked for ESPN, ended up moving to Boston. That's where I fell in love with professional sports. And so like just kind of from a background standpoint, like it's shout out my dad, but I just figured out like, hey, I love this game so much. I'm going to make it my career. And so far so good.
Is your dad hype about this? Like he
can't stop talking about it. And then when he found out that I was having a boy, it was like his dream. I mean, he pulled out like a baseball glove that he had saved forever. You know, it was one of those things where he was so excited. And I always say too, like if it wasn't for my mom like trying to keep me a little bit girly when I was younger, like I didn't even know how to do a ponytail until I was in like 7th or 8th grade.
Your dad's like, your dad's step aside. Like I got this. I got this one.
She only cares about football, okay?
Right.
But yeah, that's I just kind of turned that hobby into a career. So again, so far so good. Hopefully, knock on wood, it'll continue.
Yeah, I mean, Barstool is such a crazy place to work, I feel like.
Insane.
So for the people who don't know anything about Barstool, how could you describe Barstool?
Well, a lot of from the outside looking in, it looks like a gigantic fraternity house, right? Like it's a frat house.
Best
like,
way I could, like from the outside looking in.
Yeah, no, and honestly, even from the inside looking out, it's still a frat house sometimes. But you know, just from like a quick background, like it started in the early 2000s as a newspaper in Boston. Dave Portnoy, who a lot of people know now outside of Barstool because he's gotten so big.
Miss Peaches.
Who is a queen, by the way. Like when
I'm like, is she the CEO now?
She is by far the most famous person we have. Like I don't know. When I'm around her in person, it's just like no one else matters. Like the entire no, it's Miss Peaches.
Which if you guys don't know who Miss Peaches is, it's a dog.
She is a rescue pit
bull. You guys should go and search Miss Peaches on TikTok and you're going to go down a rabbit hole.
You notice I said person because that's the way she is. Like she is put in, like Dave puts her into a stroller like we put our children in strollers. And like no one seems to think anything's wrong with it. It's like she's the queen.
Like why don't we put adults in strollers? Because I would love that.
I say this all the time. Can you imagine if, whether it's 1 time a day, 2 times, babies are on 3 naps, if somebody made your perfect sleep conditions and praised you if you napped, how amazing that would be?
Like, why are they so upset about it?
Like, why? Like, they've got the white noise, they have the comfy temperatures, the sleep sacks. But no, Barstool basically started as a newspaper and then it exploded into, Dave did a really good job of figuring out like what media was coming next. And so a lot of people knew it from like viral Instagram. For a while, it was like viral Instagram videos and people were like, wait, it's an actual company?
Right.
We've got everything. We've got pop culture. Like the place we're doing the podcast right now, I can see, you know, the pop culture signs of like Plan Brie and BFF.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of like a fraternity, especially from the outside looking in. So how is it not only being a woman in Barstool, but also being a woman in Barstool in sports?
That's a very big difference, right? Because when I first started, I got hired in 2017 and I was on TV in Boston at the time, and that's kind of how Dave and I connected because I was on TV 3 hours, 5 days a week.
Right.
So that's 15 hours of TV. If you're in Boston, like you're like, this girl get off my TV?
Yeah, right.
But that's how he ended up seeing me, and he brought me in. And at that time, there was like 5 females in content creation. And at the time, we also had a female CEO who's no longer there. But she was like, hey, we really want to like grow this out. Like we want it to be not just like a dude factory, which is great. And it worked. But I was really lucky because I got in kind of early in that phase. And because of that, I was able to really help grow out the college football. I'm like, obviously a Boston company, they're going to be full on Patriots, full on NFL. They didn't do a lot of college football at the time. And that's kind of how Dave saw it. So I am lucky because I got to come in and really start to grow something as opposed to just being thrown into the mix, which I feel like I would have been fine. But Barstool was a great leap for me because I love just talking shit. I love being able to like hang with the guys, but also I wanted the TV aspect. So Barstool kind of merged those two things. And now we travel all over the country and do these like irreverent, for the best word, like if you watch College Game Day on ESPN, which is like obviously their big show, we're like the drunk uncle of College Game Day. Like we're doing the same thing with the big stage, but we're saying crazy stuff.
I was going to say it's a lot more fun.
I mean, yes, like no offense to anybody, but like respect, like we have way more fun and we're talking gambling. And, you know, actually when I was pregnant, and I was traveling because I had my son 2 days before the Super Bowl. So it was like perfect timing. Like, okay.
I saw that your due date was on Super Bowl Sunday. And I was like, anybody in sports knows that that's like.
Having a boy on Super Bowl Sunday, and my boyfriend, his dad is an Eagles fan. And so like the Eagles were in the Super Bowl that year. It was just crazy. Now they lost, but it's fine. We don't talk about that. But when I was traveling and doing that show when I was pregnant, we were getting beers thrown at us at one point. And it was funny, like if you watch the show, like there was a point where all the guys on stage kind of snapped into real life, like, she's pregnant. Yeah. Stop throwing beers. Like we can have fun, but like
but like
protect her, right? And that's when I was like, oh no, like, we are a frat house. Like no matter what I say, we're a frat house.
At our pregnant girl.
There's a video of me getting like literally hit in the head with a full like closed beer can, and
wait, that hurts.
Yeah, I mean, but it like, kind of hit like my headset, but like you see me kind of react, and the way that they all kind of just immediately snapped into like real mode. It was like, okay, like this is the company that we work for, and this is great. She's also a pregnant human. Can we protect her for a second? So that's the best way to describe it.
The next quarterback of the Eagles.
Right.
Everyone back it up. Which is, I mean, hearing that, it sounds like such a fun place to work.
It is.
And I feel like it has its highs, but it has to also have its lows. Like, did you ever feel like you had to prove yourself in Barstool? Or do you feel like it was always like kind of welcoming, especially because you came on so early?
I think that it's a misconception from the outside looking into that it's a very misogynistic company because of some of the content that's been put out. And I'm never going to try to like look back at what was said in like 2010 and be like, I'm going to argue with that, because that's not what my job is. I have never felt like I had to prove myself inside that company. And I truly say that regardless of, what people's opinions are about Dave or anything else. And the way that I can best describe is like when you look across, especially in college football, and I mean, you know the NFL better than anybody, like having a woman involved in sports commentary, even if they're there, a lot of time their opinion isn't stated, right? And like it's, you see a woman kind of put between two male hosts and they don't get to say their opinion. They're there just to kind of facilitate. Dave immediately was like, I want to hear everything that you have to say, and we're going to argue about it. And so from that
You're
point,
like, great, I love arguing.
I'm really good at it too. Don't ask any of the men I've ever dated, but I'm really good at it.
I'm really good.
But no, I didn't feel like I had to prove it internally. The issue is proving it externally, because it was like people like, oh, like look at the way she looks, or look what she's like. She's only here for X, Y, and Z, and it's like. Or you could just listen. And my whole thing is like, if you hate my opinion, that's fine. You're still listening to it.
Right.
So Barstool's given me that opportunity that I didn't have before. I had it a little bit in Boston because when you're on TV for 3 hours a night,
I feel like you have to find something to talk about.
You do have your opinion. So NBC did a really good job of that. But I get to actually say what I think about the sport.
Right.
And that to me, I never had to prove it inside Barstool. From the fan base standpoint, I still do every day, but I also don't care. Like, hate it or love it, you're still listening.
Well, that's the part I love. And I feel like when people are so disrespectful about women talking about sports, they're like, oh my God, you've never even like been in the NFL. You've never been in college football. I'm like, how many guys have you guys haven't been in the NFL or college football.
Oh, because you were born with a penis, more than me. Like, get out of here. Like,
because you're not as hot as I am and blonde. Like,
I'm so sorry. You can't do both.
Exactly.
Well, and that's like to me with other sports. Like I played basketball growing up. I love basketball. My baby's father loves baseball, works in baseball. I don't know enough about baseball to sit and argue with him about it. So I'm like, you can tell me, but he's never played professional baseball. Like, okay, fine, but like I still trust because he actually knows it. So that to me, and when I listen to your podcast, that's what I love the most, is that you're actually teaching it from a standpoint of like, hey, I know this because this is my life, but I'm not better than you because I know it, right? And like that to me is not something that men can understand. Like, you're not trying to be like, look, I can prove it. Like, no, I actually know it, and I actually want to like share my opinion on it. Is that okay?
And I hate when people are like, oh, sports, like, have you ever been asked, like, oh, you're a fan of the Eagles, like, name 5 players?
The worst.
Like, I mean, honestly, like, I don't even know 5 players of the teams my husband plays for.
My husband. I know my husband. No, but like that to me, it's like, okay, well, then do you want me to break down the offensive scheme for you? And I can, but that's boring. Like, that's not what
nobody cares about that.
But that's like what men, like when men are trying to test you.
Well, I guess men care about that. Sorry.
Like, and you care about it from like, I care about it when I'm watching my teams play or when I'm watching the game, but that's not, I think that's another reason why podcasts like yours and like Barstool from like a sports standpoint, that's what people actually want to listen to. Like, if you're going to sit down at a bar, like I'm the girl that drinks red wine when I watch football. Like, I don't care. That. Like, I am a wine girl.
I'm not a beer girl.
I'm like, I don't care. It's
I know it might be on brand for like me liking sports, but
but see, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, it's on brand, but like, no, I want red wine.
Let's normalize red wine during football games.
Girl, come on over. I've normalized it. I'm like, what, if it's during the day, I might pop an ice cube in that little Pinot Noir. You know what? But to me, it's like when you sit down and you're actually talking about it, whether it's with your guy friends, your girlfriends, what you're actually talking about in real life is not usually what you're watching on TV.
No.
Because it's not real conversation.
I pride myself in this. I'm never going to be a podcast that just like rifles off stats, because nobody comes to a podcast and is like, oh, I want to hear all the stats of this team and blah, blah, blah. No, like people want to know like more interesting stuff, like conversational things and like all the juicy info, which is where I'm really excited to take this podcast.
I love juicy info.
There is so much to sports that I feel like so many people don't know. And that's where the beginners in sports, I'm like, don't listen to all these like boring guys just like rifle off like, I feel like it's honestly just a competition of them trying to decide like who knows more. It's like that doesn't matter.
No, and guess what? You can Google all those things. Like, I mean, that like we have these little things called smartphones now where I can find out any stat I want. I can break down any scheme you want. That's not why people are listening.
Right.
And again, like the opinion side of things, and for women and females and girls that want to get into sports, they're going to be just oversaturated with numbers, and that scares them away. Where like I have a lot of girlfriends who have to tell me all about pop culture. Like and especially as I get older, I'm like, oh my God, please explain to me what's going on.
I know nothing.
Like, I'm like, can somebody please explain to me why I need to know this?
Yeah.
That's the way that I explain sports. And I'm doing this thing now where a lot of my girlfriends are married or getting married or having kids. Luckily on the East Coast, it's like, the age is much older than my friends in Texas. But when we were all in the dating world still, when we were younger, they would be like, can you just give me like a few headlines of like what the sports are happening before we go on these dates? Not to try to sound like we know too much, but just so we can be informed. I'm like, yeah, and that's what we need. Like, we need more of that, not let me break down, all these like schemes for you, because that's not what people are talking about at bars.
No, and I feel like men make it so scary. They're like, you're pick me girl for liking sports. They say that all the time, but it's true. It's like, you don't really need to prove yourself or your knowledge to like sports. Like, you can literally just like the color purple and be like, I'm a Vikings fan. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Yes.
And so that's what I love about, like, I feel like this is like a new wave of football. So speaking of football, college versus NFL, I feel like is such a huge... It differs.
Oh, it's
and
big difference.
I have a preference. So what's your preference?
I assume your preference is at the NFL since your husband.
No.
It's not? See, look at me. Look at me assuming a stereotype. So you're a college football girl too.
I think it's more interesting. No offense to any of the NFL teams listening.
Or I'll say, no offense from her side. I'll say this. College football to me is, I mean, granted, it's moving in such like a quick way where it is becoming so much more business-like and more NFL-like from the money standpoint. But like, to me, like growing up, going to Texas A&M, loving Texas A&M, it's like your whole life is whoever plays for that school.
Right.
Which to a certain degree, as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, they're kids still. But it's like you're rooting for the school that you love. And like, you obviously have been all over the country, and like, your husband, whoever they play for, you're going to become, he plays for, you're going to become a fan of.
Right. Like, I'm always giving me the paycheck.
As well as
I am now a fan.
Exactly. I will wear whatever colors you want if you can pay the bills. Okay.
Orange was a little difficult for me, but I got over it.
Blonde, orange is hard.
Yeah.
Orange is hard. Thinking like Legally Blonde. Whoever said orange is the new pink is seriously disturbed. I will always root for A&M, and I graduated from A&M, and I'm wearing my Aggie ring, which is obviously a taboo thing. Like, people are like, hey, you still wear your college ring at A&M. That is a tradition that people do. And that to me is like, that's what makes it so fun.
Right.
It's like so different where you're rooting for a city in the NFL, and that's fine. But if your favorite player, like for example, like, Von Miller played for A&M, wherever he ended up playing, Aggies are going to be watching.
Right.
You look at that where it's like, no, whoever's in maroon and white is who I'm rooting for. And like the passion is bar none to me.
You see, I grew up Michigan State football fan. My dad went to Michigan State, and then I went to Michigan State. And so I gotta say, go green. But it is so different because, well, I feel like also going to the school, you're like, wait, I'm going to be a fan of this for life.
For life. And like, I've been to East Lansing, by the way. We went, I don't remember what year it was.
I'm like, it's pretty.
But we had one of the craziest shows we've ever had. It was like between all these buildings, and it was gray, total Michigan day, right? And it was Michigan State versus Michigan, which I know is crazy. So of course, Dave was there playing the heel. I mean, in any rivalry in college football is so different than any rivalry in professional sports. I mean, I understand like the Red Sox Yankees, like you understand the Lakers Celtics, fine. But in college football, like that is everything. Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Texas A&M, like those, you grow up hating the other school.
Oh my, hating.
Loathe.
No, in fact, my dad was like, you should apply to U of M to get in, just to say that you denied them.
My dad said the same thing about Texas. He was like, just so everyone that says A&M is the lesser school. And I'm like, Dad, what? And now I say the same thing. Like, I'm like, no. My son, who probably won't go to A&M, which makes me sad because we are New Yorkers now.
Right.
Like, I don't really picture him like flying down to College Station, Texas, but he will go to games. He will understand the difference between, going to a real college football game in the SEC or the Big Ten versus, no offense, the games that are up here that are just like, okay, well, when do the Patriots play? When do the Giants play? When do the Jets play? Which is fine.
I feel like I think more in the South, it's like, okay, college. And then more towards the North, it's like, I feel like more on the East Coast, it's like, okay, NFL. But I'm always just like such a college football fan.
And the passion's better.
The rivalries in the NFL, I'm like, I don't even know like a huge rivalry.
I mean, like the Eagles and the Cowboys, and the only reason
is that
I know that,
See, I didn't even know that.
They hate each other. I'm interested to get your take on this too, because a lot of people have asked me. Like, I'm from Texas, but have been on the East Coast for a long time. My son's father is from New York, from the East Coast. So they were like, how did you decide what fandom it was going to be? It was, first of all, he went to a college that no one cares about. So my son is a Texas A&M fan. Like, let's get that out of the way. Yeah. And I never really cared about professional sports that much until I moved to Boston. So then I was like full-blown Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, Tom Brady. Well, he retired. So I allowed him to be an Eagles fan now because his dad is an Eagles fan. So I'm like, okay, fine, you can have the NFL because Tom Brady's retired. So whatever. And then I got the Red Sox and the Celtics. Like, my son is doomed because they were like Boston, Philly, Texas.
He's going to grow up confused.
It's fine. It's fine. But yes, no, but like that to me is like, because college was so important to me. Right. It's like, well, no, because it depends on the city that you live in, who you're going to be around. But college is like the heart.
Yeah. And like Michigan State will never go away from me.
Never.
Unfortunately, I have had a Notre Dame flag outside of my house because my husband went to Notre Dame.
That's tough.
It was my dad never, he put my husband's jersey on over his Michigan State and still wore it to the football games. He was like, I'm not giving this up.
It's closest to his heart, right?
Closest to his heart. And he still does that with the NFL because I grew up around Detroit. I'm a Lions fan, which has been difficult.
It has. It's been a little bit better as of late.
As of late, for sure.
Dan Campbell, Aggie.
Oh my God, love Dan Campbell. Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, I wanted him to come coach A&M for a while. They're like, he's not leaving the NFL, but
it's so much fun to like be able to like root against the Lions sometimes. Yes. But I'll never root against Michigan State.
Right. Well, and especially now because your husband is in professional sports. So it's like, you know, because wherever he goes, like you said, that's his job. So you have something to root for because that's your livelihood. And obviously you want him to win, but Michigan State's going to always be there regardless. Right. And that to me is what makes it so different. And A&M has over 100,000 people every single weekend. And when you look at Penn State, a lot of schools do. And like, the NFL don't get me wrong, NFL fans are crazy. Raiders fans, insane.
I loved the Raiders fan base.
Because it's more like college football. It's like this crazy
people dressing up and
it's not the wine and cheese. Not that all NFL stadiums are like wine and cheese, but a lot of them are. It's like you're there, but then like once that game is over, like you've got the crazies. You know, you've got the Bills fans and the Chiefs fans that are crazy, but overall it's not like live and die for every single person. If you graduated from A&M, for the rest of time, if you graduate from Michigan State for the rest of time, you're those fans.
The only other fan base that I will say is like pretty diehard, Cleveland Browns. They could be losing, and they're still going to show up in 6 feet of snow. It was impressive. I got barked at, and I was like, I'm part of the fan base with you right now.
I'm on your team, literally, okay? Like, I'm here. Like, we are on your team. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are diehard NFL fans. I just didn't grow up seeing it as much because it was maroon and white everything. Like, that was the way it was. And I think that's why I did fall in love with professional sports in Boston because, they have Boston College, they have other things. Yeah. But the way that they feel about the professional sports is the way I felt about college football. And like, I have friends now that are, grown up on the East Coast, like, well, how do I pick a college football team? I'm like, just start watching and you'll figure it out. Like, I have a girlfriend who loves LSU now because she watched in 2019 when Joe Burrow was there. Obviously people love Joe Burrow. And she's like, those colors are great. I'm like, you're an LSU fan now.
All you need to, you can like the colors and be like, wait, I'm kind of vibing with this.
She was like, Joe like has phenomenal fashion. I'm like, then fine. Now you're a Bengals fan too. Easy.
Yeah, and I think that's just what people need to like get into sports. Not even just necessarily women. I feel like also men, like if you don't have like one thing, it can be anything.
Anything. And that's what I like better. Like now people can say it more out loud because it used to be like, oh, you're like pink hat was literally a stereotype. But like, oh, you're just a pink hat. You're just gonna wear a pink hat. Like, who cares why they're watching? That's why I thought Taylor Swift, and I like Taylor Swift. I'm not a huge like Swiftie by any means.
Right.
Love her music. The Tortured Poets Department is so good. But I loved what she was bringing because I actually had girlfriends who wanted to watch Chiefs games with me and didn't complain about it. I'm like, hey, do you want a glass of wine? Let's watch the Chiefs game. And it's just because they felt like they were a part of it. Why is that a bad thing?
I feel like this entire offseason I've gotten asked so many times, oh, how do you feel about like the Swifties coming into football? Like, are you mad about it? I'm like, why would I ever be mad that anything brings more fans into football?
1,000%, especially more female fans that are going to start to get interested in the game itself, because football is a hard game to understand. It is, and the way that you on your podcast are talking about like this, what a first down is, like there are going to be so many men that you're like, please, like no, that's actually something that needs to be taught.
I feel like some men don't know that, and
they don't. They pretend to know, or they Google it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But to bring more eyes, especially to football in general, but then they start to see things, and they start to like, oh well, I want to learn more about college football or whatever. And then they start seeing things that interest them. Like,
then it's just like a rock rolling down a hill where you're just like, okay, wait, I'm getting into the nitty gritty and I'm liking
1,000%. Like when I did the show with Dion when he was with us before he started coaching at Colorado, and then once obviously he got there, I have friends now who watch Colorado because they're like, oh, I remember when you did the show with Dion, and then they're like, did you see Lil Wayne was at a Colorado game? I'm like, see, this is like the whole thing. Like all you need is an in to the sport, and then you can learn it.
It's the men with fragile egos that are like so hot and bothered that like Taylor Swift is bringing in more fans.
Correct. Or that you might know more football than them, or that I might know more football than them. I'm like, it's okay if Taylor Swift is there. By the way, any male celebrity, which she's the most famous person on the planet, like that's pretty undeniable at this point, outside of politics. Like when male celebrities are there, they show them just as much. Like I know. Like if any male was there, like if any of those guys had a husband that was like equally as famous, the male would be there too. Like if Justin Bieber was there,
for sure.
Like, so why are we upset about this?
I actually think at one of Taylor Swift's concert they kept showing Ashton Kutcher. I'm like, okay, like,
thank you, like whatever. And also like as like a girl that grew up loving watching football with her dad, I thought it was so cute to see all the dads,
and the daughters.
Oh my god! And they're wearing their little friendship bracelets, and like that's like some of my favorite memories are watching football with my dad growing up. Like I'll never forget. I was 9 years old and the last time A&M won anything. It was the Big 12 championship, and I remember watching that with my dad, and our dog was like barking, and those are such good memories. And now some of these dads that might not have had that in sports because their daughter might not be interested have it because of Taylor Swift. That's phenomenal.
I love that, especially because, yes, I grew up watching football with my dad. I might not have known what was going on the screen, but it was just every single Saturday we watched Michigan State. Every Sunday we were watching the Lions. And I'm excited for like this new wave of sports to not only have like these girls have a reason, which you don't need a reason to watch sports, but to have a reason to get into it, and then they're going to start loving it. And then it's just I don't know. I just feel like it's now becoming more like normalized to not be a pick-me girl to like sports.
Exactly. And it's also like, who cares if that like 10-year-old girl wants to watch football because Taylor Swift is on there? She's watching football. Like why
does that bother you?
Like, why does it bother you that girls can sit up and talk about football? To me, that's like the key. And that's why, going full circle with Barstool, that like if I was in a place where they told me you can't have an opinion, I wouldn't still be there.
Right.
And that to me is what's kept me at Barstool for so long. And I mean, so long, it's like only almost 7 years. But to me, it's like I get to actually say it because I know it.
Oh, yeah.
And I have that space, and that should be more of the norm. And unfortunately, in mainstream media, it's not.
Absolutely. And so speaking of that, we're going to do a little head-to-head. You know more about football than a lot of people, probably more than my husband.
Oh, so I doubt that. I doubt that, but I'll give it a try.
No, honestly, it's surprisingly enough, every time I do an episode, I'll ask my husband, oh, hey, like, what does this sound like? Or, oh, hey, this is a rule, right? And sometimes he's like, oh, why don't you go, like, print out, like, the NFLPA, like... I'm like, what? So I'll call up his agent. I'm like, is this true? And even him, he's like, yeah, I think so. Just double check it. I'm like,
what?
Girls are going to take over sports.
I know. Oh, well, because also like we're detectives, right? Like, so if I don't know something, I have to figure it out.
Yes, you have to figure it out. And then you're like, well, now I'm at this point, so now I have to figure out this. Like,
exactly. But then like people like your husband who are so athletically gifted and talented, they're just so good. They can just go out and do it. I'm like, that would be nice.
I'm like, can you describe how you're doing that?
Yeah, like I'm still trying to lose the baby weight, okay?
Exactly.
Like,
I'm like, it is. I wish I could lose weight as fast as my husband.
Oh my God, it's so annoying.
We're here, he's like, I need to not get the burger so I can lose 5 pounds. I'm like, okay.
I'm like, great. Like, okay, I've been working for 18 months. Thank you.
Right.
Like, have your large pizza and go play an NFL game. Like, what? Like, it's so annoying.
Exactly. So we're going to do a little game head to head, and you can give like a quick little reason as to why you're picking one versus the other.
Okay.
So first, AFC versus NFC.
Okay, well, I have to go the AFC just because the Patriots, like that, like to me, and Tom Brady being with the Bucs, like I absolutely was a Bucs fan. I actually made it, and this is another thing that a lot of men made fun of me for, sold out immediately, was a split jersey of a Patriots Bucs, and it said Brady with the colors, had a goat on it. I did crew necks and t-shirts and like little jerseys, and oh my God, I got so many people like, ugh, I'm like, watch it, and it sold out like immediately because enough people are like me, they just don't want to say it. But no, I mean forever the AFC will have my heart.
I feel like the AFC is a little bit more competitive. No offense to the NFC, but
it also, I think because of like the AFC, like the divisions themselves, like and there are going to be NFC fans who are like, that's not true. As a whole, I feel like the AFC races are usually more entertaining.
Yes.
The NFC has been better as of late, to a certain degree, but the AFC, Tom Brady played there. Tom Brady played there.
I think my husband's never played for an NFC team, which is really interesting.
That is interesting. So you're an AFC girl too?
I'm an AFC girl through and through. Well, I guess I already know the answer to this next question. Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. And listen, no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. I think he's phenomenal. But Tom Brady to me, like, first of all, I think he's phenomenal at whatever he does, but I'm very biased. But the fact that he was able to go win his 7th ring the way that he did, and the whole argument, and Bill Belichick will always be one of the greatest coaches of all time. Like, I will never discredit that. But the whole chicken and egg conversation of, like, was Tom a system quarterback? Was it Bill? There's obviously something to that partnership that they had. He went and won another Super Bowl.
That was impressive.
I was like, do we need to have this argument ever again? Like, yeah, when you have Tom Brady, the best of all time.
He's like, do you think I run these teams? Here, let me just go into, obviously there's a bunch of great players behind him.
Correct. And Patrick Mahomes is a freak of an athlete, and he's awesome. To me, like, if he's still doing it at 43, 44, 45 years old, then obviously there's a conversation.
Yeah, then we can have that discussion.
But there's not a blueprint that Tom Brady ever had to follow because he is the blueprint.
Right. That's impressive.
And also, like, just one of the best looking humans of all time. Like, I have no shame. Like, I'm like, dude, like,
He's not really my type.
Oh, girl.
Him versus Isaac, they don't really look alike.
And honestly, like, people are like, why he's having too much work done. I don't even know what work, like, I don't even care. Keep it going, Tom. Like,
Tom, give her your plastic surgeon's info.
Please. Like, he showed up the other day with some scruff, and I was like, sir, my heart cannot handle this. Like, he just keeps aging like fine wine.
Oh my God, I love it. Field goal versus 2-point conversion.
Ooh, I like 2-point conversion. I think it's a little risky. And I do understand that this is where the analytics and all the math come in. And by the way, Dan Campbell, he loves to go for the 2-point conversion.
We've seen it.
I know.
I'm like, maybe.
But when it works,
yes,
it's the best. Like, people are like, oh, he's got such balls on him,
and
right?
it makes the game so much better.
Yeah.
But also from a wife's perspective,
I can understand that.
I hate the 2-point conversion. I'm like, just fucking get points on the board. Like,
you know what?
Especially the first touchdown, I'm like, fucking just kick the
do
ball.
It. Just get the free point, okay? But that, I think from a fan standpoint, it's kind of like and I'm trying to get more into soccer. Like, every time the World Cup comes around, I'm like, I'm a soccer girl. Like, I know people hate penalty kicks, like, to end the game. I'm like, as a fan, it's so exciting. If I was playing or coaching, I would feel the same way that you do. Like, no. That's not how this game should be decided.
Right.
Just kick the extra point. Just, so I do feel that, but from a fan, I like 2-point conversions.
See, and for the listeners, 2-point conversion versus a field goal, 1 point, 2-point conversion, obviously 2 points. And if you miss either one, it's 0 points.
Right.
So would you rather have 1 point? Would you rather have 2 points?
And having the extra kick is an easier thing to do. But so, like, a touchdown being 6 points, you're going to get that. But you could be 7, you could be 8. And it is, like, when you really get down in the nitty gritty, and again, as a female detective, right? I'm like, there's so much that goes into it of, like, when they should do that and when they shouldn't do that. I'm the armchair quarterback that's in there like, just go for the 2-point conversion.
The same. I'm like, it's not that hard. Just run the ball into the end zone.
And then when they don't get it, I'm like, why didn't you kick the extra point, the field goal? Like, you have a field goal kicker for this reason. So, like,
not the kicker just sitting there like, I could have got the point.
But can you imagine, like, and I'm sure you've known plenty of kickers throughout your husband's career. Like, that to me is, I couldn't do it. Like, I would need the most psychiatry, psychology, anything I could possibly get, because if you do miss that, people are like, you've got everybody,
horrible.
you've got, like, all the overweight, like, Midwestern men. I could have done that. I'm like, well, that is their only job.
It is their only job. One of our best friends, his name is Michael Badgley. He is kicker for the Detroit Lions. I've seen a lot of hate towards kickers because everything rides on them. I mean, even in college, you see if a kicker misses.
And college kickers are not very good.
No, they're not.
they are not dependable. Which, and when I say it's like your only job, like, yeah, but they're still human, and it's also, there's no automatic kicker. No, we've seen kickers that are more automatic. But, like, I can't imagine at any level going out there and it is your fully, I mean, and granted, obviously
that's your only
you can block
job.
It, like, you can,
that's the
whatever,
only reason you're here.
They need to protect you, but that, like, and in practice, kickers and punters, they're not running like the drills, like, they're in the indoor, like,
they don't even
around.
have to. A lot of listeners probably don't know this. You don't have to kick every day. When you're a kicker in the NFL, you kick maybe once a week.
Some of the best kickers in college are, like, former soccer players. Like, like, I remember at A&M they, like, held walk-ons because they were like, can a soccer player come out here? It's like,
but I've also been on the other side where my husband's played for teams and he's played for enough, so I feel like I can say this out without being anxious to say it. But there have been teams that definitely go for the 2-point when their kicker is not doing really well.
Correct, yes. And I have seen that in college when it's like a college kicker, which again, these are kids, and I do have to remind myself of that, but I'm also just like,
you suck. Oh,
yeah,
wait, you're 18.
You're 18. I'm so sorry, especially now that I have a son who's 18 months old. I'm like, if I ever, I'm going to be that mom.
Oh, I'm going to be that mom.
I'm going to be crazy. Like, I'm already nuts as it is. But no, then you see college coaches able to make that decision easier than probably in the NFL because they're not getting paid to do it.
Right.
I mean, to a certain degree. But like, it's very obvious when in college they start going for the 2-point conversion. Like, it's because he missed like a 30-yarder.
Like, oh, that's sad. Throwback jerseys versus regular jerseys.
I think it depends on the school. For me, I'll just go for A&M just because like I like the newer jerseys. Like I don't like.
Interesting.
I know the throwback jerseys are good every once in a while, but like maybe I'm a basic bitch. I don't know, but like the cooler that they get, the more like the black and maroon.
Yeah.
Like I want that. My dad makes sure though that I keep the retros for sure.
He's like, this is necessary.
I will say though the wave of like oversized sweatshirts and like kind of going back to like
right.
The one of my favorite ones is like one from like 1985 that my dad still had in his closet. And like that to me is like, that's vintage.
See,
now.
I love the vintage. Like,
yes.
As a wife, whenever my husband signs to a team, I am on like Poshmark, like vintage Raiders, and I'm like the girl, but I don't cut any of them up. And when he leaves the team, I respectfully list it again for the same exact price.
That's very respectful.
Everyone's like, you don't need that money. I'm like, it was $50.
Right. I will say that retro, like professional jackets, I love. Like the starter jackets, like those to me, like I have a really cool Boston Celtics like retro jacket that I love.
I feel like you don't even need to be a fan to wear a vintage like form of any sports gear because I will be on just like vintage NFL t-shirt. I think they're cute.
They are cute. Like for me, it's like if I'm gonna do a jersey, I want the new one. If I want like to be cute and like to like be like casual streetwear, but I'm like being a little sporty girl. I want vintage.
See, and I have a Cleveland Browns t-shirt that I love, and everyone's like, Browns again? And I'm like, no, get the fuck off my back.
See, that would be
I just like the shirt. It is hard.
So, and like anytime you post anything, you have to think about that.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like trying to hint where your husband may be signing or not. Oh, no, I couldn't.
And some of these NFL social media teams will be like on my post, like, hey, we saw your Eagles gear in the background. And I'm like, okay, sign my husband's social media team. You sign my husband. I'm like, and you have nothing. You can't.
Right.
Yeah. Why don't you go to the GM?
And by the way, I'm a new mom. Whatever t-shirt comes out of the closet is what I'm putting on.
Exactly.
So, like,
and if it gets dirty, I might have to throw in a different team.
Exactly.
Okay. Last question. Defense 3-4 or 4-3?
So I'm more of I want some more linebackers out there. I'm more of a
Really?
I know that's, I think it's because I love like, first of all.
Well, I guess give a little quick what 3-4 versus 4-3 is.
So you have a defensive line.
This is actually, you're schooling me right now.
Really?
My husband plays 4-3 usually.
Okay. So there's linebackers and there's defensive linemen. So the defensive line, for people who are listening, are like the really big dudes that have their hand down on the ground that are going up against the offensive line who is protecting the quarterback on the other side. So for a 3-4, you have 3 guys on the defensive line down and you have 4 linebackers. So it's 3 up front, 4. So the front 7 as a whole can kind of be different formations. I like more when the linebackers are, so I like 3-4. There's more linebackers because they can blitz the quarterback faster. So they can get more around on the edge. There are a lot of people that would prefer 4-3 because there's more defensive linemen to block the 5 offensive linemen. So it really just depends on what your style is. Honestly, whichever one works for my team to win. But I like more linebackers just because I think it's more fun to watch.
Yeah, it's crazy because I tell everybody, I'm like, oh yeah, my husband's defensive end. And he's like, well, sometimes I also play as an outside linebacker.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of like outs, like the defensive line, like a lot of them that are that kind of hybrid, like that is perfect for, so like every team should sign your husband because he can play both, right? Like that's why
very he can play
hard
special
to do.
Teams.
Right.
So hire
sign him.
him.
Hello. But it's very hard to go, like if you think about it, like even just in any type of workout, like if you go from being in a stance where your hand is down on the ground versus standing straight up and having to get to whoever your assignment is, those are very different positions to be in.
It is crazy. My husband, I think maybe in the past year or two, he started to play where his hand's not down.
Yeah.
And he's like, I am so much quicker. I'm like, how have you not thought of that?
Right. It's crazy. But like when you're watching it, it's like the armchair quarterback where I'm like, I could have gotten to the quarterback there. But Well, yeah, it's much easier.
I'm like, how did your foot slip, Isaac? I'm like, get the fuck up.
How dare you fall down like on this grass with like 400 men coming at you that weigh 400 pounds, you know? But no, I mean, this is my thing. Like if I was going to play football, like I would want to be a wide receiver just because it's like the flashiest thing to do. But one of the best positions to play is where you can play both on the line or off the line.
It is.
Because you're more versatile.
For sure. And that makes you easier to hire, which, by the way, my husband is looking for a job.
You can play special teams too, okay?
You know what? So now this is a conversation I'm excited to hear more about. Okay. You are a mom.
I am.
You've talked about your son.
Yes.
Now, being a woman in sports and then coming out and saying that you're pregnant and you're due on Super Bowl Sunday, how did everybody at Barstool and all the fans react?
So it's interesting that you bring up the pick me girl thing because I never saw myself as like a quote pick me girl, right? And I still don't, but I look back now, the way that I felt when I first found out that I was pregnant was like, oh my God, there's gonna be an allure of me from our fan base, because again, our fan base is different than just like your casual NFL fan. Like it is very young and it's passionate and it's a lot of 18 to 34-year-old men. It's like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be as attractive to them anymore. And I look back now and I hate that I ever felt that way. But it was honestly, the first thought was like, I keep my private life very private. I don't ever talk about who I'm dating or who I'm with. And now, guess what? I'm physically pregnant.
You're like you can't hide that. You can't hide a basketball.
Right, you can't. And I ended up trying to hide it for a certain amount of time. And I talked to the guys inside Barstool, talked to Dave, talked to Dan Katz, and they were all phenomenal because we're all so close. And they're like, Kayce, you have way too much on your plate to worry about like wearing specific t-shirts. Like, what are you doing? Like because I was so excited too. Like I was so happy, especially I know girls are phenomenal. So I was so happy I found out I was having a son. I was like, yes, a boy mom. So I was born to be a boy mom.
You're like, this is all I wanted.
This is all I wanted. So I had to really get over that of just being like, no, this is what life is about. And as soon as I made the announcement, it was like weight off my chest. And I did it about this time right before the season because I was like, I cannot go through a season of traveling literally every single week, traveling all over the country and worrying about hiding a pregnancy for what? Like I am a woman who is ready to have a family and I can do it both. The difference too is I was always very vocal about not wanting kids. I didn't think I wanted them until I was presented the opportunity physically and I was like, wait, I actually do want this. Like I really, really want this. And we were so excited. And so I think that I look back now and I'm not too hard on myself because you can't be as a mom.
Right.
But I think, why did I care about anybody else's opinion? Because it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Absolutely. And you mentioned traveling all the time. You travel for Barstool all the time.
All the time.
So is that hard? Because I feel like personally as a mom, it's been hard because not only is my husband still pursuing the NFL and like the idea of having to pick up and move, but then me also trying to pursue my own career. I'm like, wait, she needs like my full attention. Like, do you get mom guilt? Like, how is like balancing that?
I mean, also 8 months is still so brand new. I mean, like that is like, I always said like postpartum, they say is 6 weeks, which is like the most laughable thing of all time.
Bullshit.
It's the most bullshit of all time. Like, and there are people that have to go back to work before that. Like, don't even, like I could sit down.
An NFL player can't even nurse an ankle sprain in 6 weeks.
It's fucking crazy.
We have a child come out of our bodies.
Like I, by the way, created it and am now feeding it from my body. Exactly. Like, what are you talking about? 6 weeks. So Barstool had a 4-month maternity leave, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so
especially for like a male-dominated company.
Yeah, great. And I mean, it did work out very nicely for me because I didn't have to worry about going right back to football. Like I would have absolutely been back earlier just because I'm not about to get, Wally pipped, which by the way is like a term in sports where it's like Wally Pipp was a baseball player who stepped in and you get Wally pipped. You just like lose your job because somebody was better than you. That's like an internal fear of mine.
Right.
I was like, I'm not going to get Wally pipped just because I had a baby. I didn't have to worry about it because it was the off
I mean, you had your child like right around Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes. Like, so I missed the Super Bowl basically, which was like, the last show I went into was 2 days before I went into labor. And I thought I looked great. I'm like, I look back now, I'm like, girl, what were you even doing at the studio that day? Like, sit your ass at home. Like, are you crazy?
It's like the pre-labor, like lips, like you're like, you just look tired and like sore.
And everybody kept, oh, you look so great. And I'm like, did I though?
It looks like I had lip injections.
It looks
That's
like
why
I am miserable because I was. But no, the mom guilt actually, is harder for me this season going in, and I haven't even gotten there, but it's because my son knows more right now. Like last year, it was harder physically because like I mean, they were potatoes. Like they're still potatoes. Like they can't move around. Like there's not much anybody can really do to help other than just watch them. Now my son is so keenly aware of like what's going on, but he can't have full conversations yet. So that's going to be difficult because I see the excitement and, you know, learning like when people leave and when people go. And then I start to think about it, I'm like, hey, like there's one day where he's going to sit there and be like, look at what my mom does. Look at how cool this is. And, you know, his dad works in sports too. And so the fact that we're both going to get that opportunity to teach him, like, this is what you get to do. And by the way, your mom gets to do all these cool things as a woman in sports. Like I really do focus on that. But mom guilt's crazy. I actually, when I was pregnant, and so we were very lucky, and I call it airport annoying because we fly private, which I mean, like thank you, Dave.
I peaked that. I was like, okay, Barstool.
yeah, airport night, which is great because we get to fly day in, day out a lot, which is really nice. It's just really nice. So I get to home to my son much quicker. But when I was pregnant, I remember the guy. So Dave doesn't have kids other than Miss Peaches, if you want to count that. But the other guys do. And I remember them telling me, like, this is going to be much harder on you. And it would offend me because, like, well, you guys do it every week. And they're like, yeah, but you don't get it. I'm like, I was so offended, truly.
Right.
And now I'm like, no, you are right. Even flying day in and day out.
I hate to admit when, like, people are right about certain things.
Like, it is much harder for me as a mom, even for like 14, 15 hours of traveling and working, to be away just because there's that biological connection. And like I stopped breastfeeding at 5 months. That was my decision. So like even though he's not dependent on my body last season, it was still like, oh no, like that is something that's very hard. So that's something I really had to like learn, is that their experience is not the same as mine.
Right.
And they have wives, girlfriends, partners that do understand that. So I kind of leaned into their advice from a standpoint of that. Like, how did you help your wife or your girlfriend or the mother of your child feel better?
Yeah. And I was just recently on a panel all about sports, and one of the women on the panel was talking about how women in sports is like it's newer. I mean, I guess you could say, but I feel like one thing that men don't think about is like what we positively bring to the sports world and community.
Right.
So like think about even being a mom. It's like, okay, I'm probably a little bit more compassionate just as like human nature. Like I'm just more compassionate as a mom, but think about bringing that passion into like sports and into like different areas. And I think it should be seen as like a positive.
It absolutely should be. And I make this joke all the time, but it is true. It's like I have great babysitting experience for my toddler because I babysit 4 grown men all the time. And like that to me is something that I really pride myself on, because if you watch these shows that we do, it's complete shit show half the time. And my job is to bring it all together and make sure it stays on course and make sure you hit the ads. And it's like, oh, well, what does a mom do? Make sure the house runs, make sure the kids are okay, even if you have
it's
all
like
the help in the world.
running to-do list in your head. And you're
right,
like,
exactly. Like when I leave every morning, whether, you know, my nanny is there or his dad is there, whoever it is, like I have a list of things that I need. So when I get home, I know he was taken care of. And then when I'm at work, I'm doing the same thing. It's just about football and about, you know, these 40-year-old men who are still children.
Right.
So there is an aspect of it's like, does somebody else want to try to do all these things? Because guess what? I can do it both. I can do both of them, okay? And men obviously don't fully understand that until they witness their partner go through it. And then I do think that the good men out there understand, like, we can't do this the way they can. So why not put it into like real life work and sports? Because it's a better it's a better concept when you have somebody who can understand how to organize things the way a mom can.
For sure.
And we can organize the best.
Speaking of organizing, are you planning to have him in sports? Do you hope he becomes a football player? Are you rooting?
I had this conversation before we started. So I love football. I can't imagine my son getting hit. I'm at that point right now where I'm like, oh my God, am I one of those moms? And I've always like, no. So I know that I do want him to play football. His dad wants him to play baseball. Right now, his favorite thing is to play basketball. He learned very quickly, if I say backy, he wants to play on his basketball hoop. So right now his focus is there. I think that I know this sounds so cheesy. As long as he loves sports and loves to watch sports and is engaged in it, and even if he doesn't, I know I'll be okay. But to me, it's just like that passion that our families both have.
Right.
Whatever he wants to play, I'm okay with, as long as he'll sit and watch football with me. If you don't want to play it, son, that's fine.
He's at his sippy cup right now. You're like, this is the screen time you get.
Yeah. I love Miss Rachel so much. Like, I don't know if you're in the Miss Rachel space yet.
No, we use it as like a podcast right now whenever she's like screaming in the car.
Yes.
But we haven't given her like the view.
Miss Rachel is a queen. That's like of all the things I had in my career, like when Miss Rachel started following me on Instagram, I was like, I've peaked.
Nothing else. This is it.
I was like, this is it. My son doesn't even know how cool I am yet.
She needs to do a sports episode.
I said if she would start singing like the different way, like different sports and stuff.
I feel like that's how I would learn learn more about sports.
Exactly. Oh, I mean, I like the phonics song. Like I'm learning, like, oh, like, you know, I can learn my ABCs in a different way now. Like, please teach me the sports. But now it's like, okay, I'll put a smaller, you know, maybe a little. I haven't had to do this yet. I'm like, what is my first season of where I actually do have to watch without him? Because last year he didn't know what was going on.
Right.
Like he can deal with it. That's my job. I have to watch games.
Right.
If I'm home, I have to watch games. Well, I guess we're going to be more of a Miss Rachel in the other room.
It's like the
household.
split screen. Instead of 2 games, it's
I
like...
thought about mounting a smaller TV or having somebody else mount, because I can't do it, but having somebody else mount a smaller TV under my main TV, because I was like, how are we going to watch games on Saturdays and Sundays without this man losing his absolute shit? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's my job.
Which is why I'm grateful when they come out with like the Nickelodeon games. I'm like, oh, it's like geared towards
great.
kids.
Like these are the things I'm like, can we have all of these games televised on Nickelodeon, or can Miss Rachel do it maybe, please?
Exactly.
Please.
She needs to like commentate a game. That would be iconic.
Oh, I would tune in every single second. But no, it's something that you don't realize as a non-parent, as a sport, if you work in sports or whatever. And like obviously, like when your husband is playing on Sundays, you're gonna want your daughter and your kids to watch. So you hope that they love it. Otherwise, it's gonna be miserable, right?
Exactly. So I have to teach her to like the color blue. So. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Gosh, thank you for having me.
One last question.
Okay.
So what would you say to any woman trying to get into the game of football, where to start, beginner info?
Don't be scared to ask questions. Do not be worried that if you ask something, it's going to sound stupid. There are no stupid questions. This game is so intricate and so detailed, and it's very hard to learn, just like a lot of things are. It's like, you know, if you're learning a new language, you're not going to be scared to ask what something means or how to conjugate nouns or whatever, conjugate verbs. So just ask the question, because if you're really interested in it, there are going to be people that'll actually teach you. And if somebody is an asshole to you about asking, just don't ask them again. They don't deserve to be in your life.
Tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, tell them. Listen, you're going to learn more than them, and then you're going to tell them that you know more, but just don't be scared. And also just like turn a game on, you know, watch a Michigan State game, watch an A&M game. You're going to find things that you absolutely love. And a lot of wags are great. And is that an offensive term? I don't even know.
I think it has a negative connotation, but
I don't like. I hope I didn't offend you there.
No,
but like
no,
I'm
getting not easily offended.
I didn't think so. You're like me. Getting into like I love, you know, when people are like, oh, I love this wives style. I want to watch these football games. And Taylor Swift has been the ultimate example of that. But just find what you love and get into it. Learn. And if you need to ask questions, ask them. Who cares? Who fucking cares? People think it's a stupid question. It's not.
Thank God for Google too.
Literally, Google saves
Google
me.
it.
As a mom, I Google everything. Like, can you imagine being a mom without Google? I can't.
No, absolutely not. Me at the hospital trying to get my daughter into her car seat. Google how to put baby in car seat.
In full circle, that Duna getting into the car.
Yeah,
like I had
the
to
hospital
Google
is like, I don't want to be liable, and Google is like, I'll be liable.
Yeah,
don't
right.
worry.
It's fine. But no, that to me, it's like I love women and anybody getting into sports. Like I have a lot of guy friends who weren't into it, especially like my gay guy friends are like, I don't want to be about like a straight man, but like I want to learn. And I'm like, I got you, babe.
You're like welcome.
Welcome. Let's do it. Come over for some Pinot Noir. We'll watch it together.
They're like, I'm in.
Yeah, I'm in. It's my favorite. Like, it's like I actually had a my baby shower was on an NFL Sunday, and it was like I only invited the girls and the gays, and we had the football game on, and it was a brunch where they all had mimosas and wine, and we watched football. And I was like, this is my life. This is what I want.
I need to be invited next time.
If I have another one, you are absolutely invited.
Okay, well, where can people find you?
So my name is spelled strange. It's Kayce Smith. So Instagram, Twitter, Kayce Smith. I'm trying to get into TikTok. I've been told I need to do that. But anything Barstool Sports. I mean, I'll be all over everything for the next like 6 months. So
I love it. You guys can find her all football season all over your screens. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was a blast.